You know, newspapers have always been, in this republic, the primary source of journalism. They're the institutions that get a whole room of people together, sometimes as many people as are in this room tonight. And they're all charged with going out, reporting on the community, coming back, and churn up all this information, dig up all this stuff, we'll put it in the paper, and send it to the people. And newspapers have been a very vital part of this republic from its beginning. But in the last several years, we have seen the most dramatic decline in newspapers and the most dramatic diminishing of newsrooms ever in the history of the republic. In fact, it is an epic international diminishing. I was invited in June to go to Oslo to speak at the 60th anniversary of the United Nations Freedom of Expression components of their charter. And they invited me. I thought, wow, it's very cool. I've been invited to Oslo. And I realized only when I got there that I had been invited because everybody else from around the world wanted to hear the horror story of what's happening to journalism in America. Because there's no place else where it's as bad. There are problems in many other countries. But the decay of journalism, the disappearance of journalism in the developed Western world is happening more rapidly in the United States than anywhere else. How rapidly? For the last 2 years, newspapers in this country have, over the last 2 years, we have seen roughly 100 to 150 newspapers close each year. It wasn't just the PI. Newspapers are closing across the country. Big city dailies. Of course, the PI closed here. But Denver lost the Rocky Mountain News. Tucson lost a daily newspaper. Albuquerque lost a daily newspaper. Across this country, state after state, big cities losing their competitive situation, but also mid-sized cities. Ann Arbor, Michigan, the home of the University of Michigan, a great academic town, the kind of town that might actually have this many people who come to a town hall meeting. This summer, they closed their daily newspaper. College town, no daily newspaper coming out every day in print on the streets. It's just gone. It's happening all over this country. And we have discussion now, serious discussion, that San Francisco may become the first big city in this country, major metropolitan area with no daily newspaper, that the San Francisco paper will close. There's talk about the Boston paper closing, the Boston Globe actually closing. There's talk about newspapers across this country, big newspapers closing. And it's not, as you know in Seattle, the talk precedes the reality. The papers do close. But the worst thing is not the closing of the papers. The worst thing is what's happening at the papers that are staying open. Because they are laying off journalists at a rate that is simply emptying out our newsrooms. They are maintaining the facade of the daily newspaper as we knew it, but without the beating heart of that institution. Every month for the last 2 years, newspapers have laid off 1,000 employees. 1,000 employees a month, every month for the last 2 years. In fact, actually more than that. Now here's an interesting thing. I went into journalism to avoid doing math. But the ASNE, which is the Newspaper Editors Association, says that there are 46,000 people employed in daily newspaper newsrooms in America today. Now, do the math. Losing 1,000 a month, that's 12, 15,000 a year. How many years do we have left? It's not many. We are in an incredibly rapid and radical state of decline. And the interesting thing is that it's not just decreasing the newsroom in any particular place. They're closing Washington bureaus at a rate of 1 a week. One Washington bureau covering our federal government closes every week. Foreign bureaus closing, as we've discussed, at incredibly rapid rates. State houses, which used to be awash with journalists covering the affairs of state, taxes and spending, all these major issues. State houses in many states in this country have legislative sessions covered by 1 or 2 reporters. Sometimes just an Associated Press reporter, no daily newspaper reporters coming, no TV, no radio. This is a moment in which, as Tom Stoppard tells us, things are happening in the dark. Our governance, our civic life, going dark.